Hey everybody. So I am going to go over assignment 2 in detail. Let's get full screen mode going here. This is posted under assignments on your e-learning. You will have 2 weeks to do it, and it will be due on the day that we meet in 2 weeks, or on the day that you attend class. So your section will receive a specific due date, and I will let you know shortly when that is. So, introduction and context to the assignment. From assignment 1, we learned that even the smallest or most minimal of spaces incorporates design elements and principles into creating a spatial experience. We also began to explore how design elements and principles support and reflect personal identity. So now that you have a lens for design elements and principles, let's expand outside of our personal habitat to experience how design elements and principles are used in public spaces. With our learned knowledge from assignment 1 on how design elements and principles impact volumetric spaces, the same is true for environmental graphics and graphic design, both forms of visual communication and important in interior design practice. Your task: walk around public spaces, whether it's campus buildings, exterior parks and public spaces, the grocery store, big box stores, restaurants, really any place that you feel safe to explore and that's public. You will be seeking out examples and instances where you observe the below graphic design elements and principles, which is on the next page. For each of the item listed, photograph evidence of it in the public world. So it's essentially a scavenger hunt. Compile your photographs into a PDF book. Each page of the book will represent a separate element or principle. In a one-page composition, include the photographic evidence of the item, that's your photograph, as well as a one-paragraph explanation of how and why the subject of the photograph represents the item, the element or the principle that you've selected, including the definition in your own words. The composition of the PDF book also needs to be integrated into your learned graphic design knowledge to create a balanced document that is not only easy to understand, but utilizes wayfinding to help guide readers through the book. So for those of you who had class this week, we talked about wayfinding, or in-person class. Now there is a video posted that goes into this as well, called Week 5 in-class activity. But we did discuss wayfinding, and a really great example that I think almost all of us can relate to is in a hospital where the floor plans are crazy. And it's so easy to get lost. There's so many important areas. There's areas where people shouldn't go or certain people can go. And so they use environmental graphic design in the environment to help people know where those are. And they don't always, say in text, in writing, what they are. Sometimes they'll use colors or arrows or certain flags or logos or artwork. And it is a form of, environmental psychology, and people interpret the meaning of what that's trying to portray. So we might understand if we're in a certain space and we're seeing there's a common color on the floor and it's green, that space is probably unique from the space that maybe has a blue floor. And so think about that. Try to apply that concept to your book that you will create. And so what is a good wayfinding strategy in books? Well, you have page numbers. That helps you understand where you are. Sometimes documents and books have headers and footers. A lot of times they do have some kind of color element to it, and maybe it's just a small color aspect to it, or a section logo of some kind. There's really many different ways to think about it based on the material that you're presenting. So really consider how when you have a reader who is going to be picking up this book and going through it, how are they going to know how, the order that you want them to take the information in, and how you want them to really appreciate your work. So your submission will be a digital PDF to Dropbox on eLearning. I promise I will create a Dropbox this time. I will do that right after this. And so if desired, you may also print your pages and professionally bind your book for submission in addition to submitting the PDF. And so this binding will be different than what we've been talking about in design communication. In design communication, we've been talking more about the binding of design documentation, but this is more of a book. And so there are different ways, doing spiral bound, having the cover a different material. There's resources on campus and in Kalamazoo where you can have your book bound. But give it a creative, appropriate title. And so as an example, I wrote interior design, environmental graphics, and public space, or graphic design within interior design. So you might have a specific agenda or a theme to your book, and integrate that into the title as well. So here's a list of those items. There's 10, so you'll have a minimum of 10 pages, one for each. There's repetition, contrast, proximity, and alignment. So those are the 4 graphic design principles that we've been discussing in our in-class activity. In addition to this, you have movement. You have 3 types of balance. You have symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. And then you have emphasis and unity. So you have gotten into those in the design elements and principles within your own private space, but now look at how that is applied to a public space, and also utilizing the idea of universal design. So your deliverables, you will have the cover page with your name, course number, date, instructor, project title, basic cover stuff. You'll have a table of contents, and that will include the appendix. And then you'll have your minimum of 1 page per item listed above. And then you'll have a terminology page, which will just, be a page typed up of any design-specific language you use throughout the book, because you will find yourself starting to use language that might not be universal to everybody in non-designers, and you really want to be able to communicate to everybody. So a terminology page will help establish the words you're using. And then you will have an appendix section. So that will have a separate cover page, just appendix, and then any process work you've done. So it could be field sketches. These do not need to be rewritten or edited. They can be scanned directly in just the way they are. Even if you feel like maybe they're not readable or understandable, it's just to illustrate your process work and how your mind is working with your hands to process the information you're taking in. And then the assignment 2 handout, which is this document. You will include that as the final item in your appendix. So this page is the page that I will be filling out for you when I go through your book. And this breaks down the grading criteria. So this project is worth 100 points. 10 points goes towards the PDF book qualities. So that's the basics of all of the items listed in the deliverables, page numbers, appropriate title, kind of the things that make it a book. And then there's the PDF book, Graphic Design and Wayfinding. That's worth 30 points. That's a heavier pointed item. So this will be based on the level and degree of incorporation of graphic design elements and principles, logical and understandable wayfinding strategy. So think of the elements and principles that you studied in your own space, and think about the graphic design principles that we looked at in class, and find ways to incorporate those into your book to elevate the experience of reading your book. And then 50% of the grade will be the accuracy of the photographs and the descriptions. So photograph clearly illustrates evidence of the design element or principle. The description also includes correct definition and real-world analysis of the evidence you found. So that is why are you calling this photograph an example of movement? And then define what movement means as a design principle in your own words. And then 10 points for language. So this would be the incorporation of professional interior design and design terminology when speaking about your work. You might not realize it already, but you have started integrating those words just by the instructions on the assignment, the language being used in lectures and in the activities, you're in the readings. You've already started incorporating that. So continue to absorb that language and then apply it to your work. So review the posted lectures, the readings, to find these terms just to get you started. Wayfinding should be a term in your book. So wayfinding isn't a typical word in non-design environments. And so, you might have a specific definition of wayfinding that is a little bit more personal and unique to you than the generic definition of it. So put your definition and what wayfinding means to you and in your book on that terminology page. I would start with this first. Start thinking about what wayfinding means to you first, so you can be thinking about it early on and how you want to format your book. Other terms you should include are the principles of universal design. It's a PDF that is posted on e-learning right now under lectures. And here's a hint. So when you discuss your photographic evidence in your paragraph, it would behoove you to use how it is impacting or being impacted by universal design principles. So we will get more into universal design from a true design, spatial design, but right now we're focused on thinking about universal design principles, which is a PDF on e-learning, just like the graphic design principles, also a PDF on e-learning in lectures. So that is the final page of this assignment. This has already been posted on e-learning. However, I will update individual due dates for different sections. So everybody receives a true 2-week time span, which gives everybody the opportunity to have their work reviewed in person if you're an in-person student, or we can schedule an appointment, or we could even get together digitally and talk about it, maybe have a discussion. So, all right, thank you. I will see you guys later. Bye.